Welcome to Wellthy Living Conversations. I'm Lisa, your host and founder of Wellthy Living. It's here that I connect with a variety of wonderful people to have inspiring and insightful conversations to help you live a meaningful, connected and well life, both personally and professionally. So I love a good story, especially ones from women who challenge ideas and societal norms, showcase diversity, overcome judgment and shame, and find beauty in the broken and redefine success to live their best life. And today I'm chatting with a woman who has done and continues to do just this. My guest today is a woman often referred to in women's business circles as the copyright queen, Jay Crisp Crow. So welcome, Jay.
Thank you. It's copywriting queen is not a title you can give yourself, but it is very lovely that other people have said it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so good to finally have you on the show, and we've planned to record an episode a number of times, and for varying reasons it hasn't gone ahead, and it's so wonderful to have you with me today.
Thanks, and thank you for being persistent.
Oh, no problem.
Lovely to be here.
But today we're not going to be giving you tips on copywriting. Instead, Jay's going to share with us about her life with an invisible illness and her achievement in successfully staying connected and living well despite her body being sick or unwell. So let me just start by telling you a little bit about Jay. So in her old life, Jay juggled a family, a disability, and a communications job that sucked the juice from her bones. Then she had firm words with herself, found her voice, and took her own gig on the road. Through Crisp Copy, Jay writes blow your hair back premium copy for brands, big and small, and teaches women in business how to write copy that sells through coaching, consulting, and courses. She regularly presents in Perth and online in everything from staying away from safe copy to disability and business and being fat and successful. She co-founded a social enterprise with her queen ruler daughter, Ella, and in 2019 launched her first podcast, So Crisp. Some days she runs a business just as a middle finger to everyone who said she couldn't make a living writing or tells her she charges too much. So don't judge. Motivation is a key. Is a different for everyone. So this isn't the first time I've read Jay's bio. So a couple of years ago, I recall sitting at my desk researching Jay in preparation as a judge for the Osmumpreneur Awards. And the first time I met Jay was when she was sitting across from me pitching to myself and my co-judges for the WA Business Excellence Award. Allocating her the winner for this category was super easy. Since I've followed her newsletters and socials and occasionally flicked her some copy for her to review for me. So to have her on the show today and to be able to go a little bit deeper is a real treat. So, as I said, today we're not going to be talking about copywriting, but I'll weave your wordsmith magic into the episode by defining and clarifying some commonly thrown around words and terms. So I thought we could start by defining two words, success and well. So let's start with success.
I think success is really such an interesting concept for women in business particularly, and I only ever really can speak to business women because I am one. I've never been a man, so I can't really ever speak from that perspective, but also because my entire business revolves around women. I didn't really set out for it to be that way, but I think when your driving force is the amplification of women's voices, and you do come from an angle where I guess I have experienced business and life and creating a family and just surviving, even from from the get-go. Let's just say I'm an extremely privileged white woman living in a society where I fell down the government caught me, and I understand and fully acknowledge that is I guess my responsibility to always kind of accept and appreciate that that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. So obviously when I talk about struggle, it's just my personal struggle living in a society, obviously, where I was taken care of. But success, I think, is so interesting for all of the women that I work with, regardless of their situation, because I think we come into business and life, or careers, or anything that we're kind of trying to make our mark in, and there is an external description of success that we're trying to live up to, and a lot of the time it takes us a really long time to figure out what that actually looks like for us and what we're going to be happy with, because living up to somebody else's idea of what successful looks like or feels like, or, you know, does that mean money in the bank? Like, what are all the tangibles of that success? That just makes us miserable, I think. And it takes us a while to figure out that successful does not have to look or feel healthy, sadly. You can be successful and sick. You can be successful and fat. You can be successful and disabled. I use disability first language purposefully, because I don't think that I don't, as a disabled person, I feel proud of being part of that community. So I don't say person with a disability. I always say disabled person when I'm talking about myself. And I think that it takes us a wee while to figure out what we want, right? And part of that is, what do we want success to look like? We know a lot of things that we don't want, but that doesn't always mean that we've quite figured out what success is going to feel like and look like for us. So I think success is a really tricky one. Like, externally, it looks like cars and houses and money, and, you know, for business women, beautiful websites and amazing Instagram, and there's all this like, I'm doing fine. But if it doesn't feel good, if you're sacrificing time with your children and that's the reason you started the business, then you're not successful. I think it's a multi-layered thing. It's like an evolutionary process where you think, oh, I feel good about this. This is what success feels like. And then life changes and you have to change with it, I think, a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and well is tricky. Well is hard, because every way we turn, we as women are told that wellness is the epitome of what we should be aiming for. And for chronically ill or disabled women, we're never going to reach that. We're never going to get there. We're never, ever going to be healthy, probably, for a majority of us who have lifelong illnesses, which means, what does that mean for us? If wellness is what we should be aiming for, like, do we just give up now? Do we just lay down and dig ourselves a hole? That's not an option. That got a little ranty. Sorry.
No.
First question.
It's great. No, it's great. And I think that this is the key, really, isn't it? When words have so many different meanings based on our own personal experiences and based on our own personal values and views. And this is where I think that the change is slowly happening, and people are starting to recognise that. Well, in the circles that I sort of associate with, people are starting to recognise that. I don't know if in the corporate world or mainstream that is happening as much, but I think that success and well are two terms that are forever changing depending on what is going on with our life. And our goals aren't set in concrete. They are forever changing, and so is our intention, and everything is relative to our own personal situation. So there are times for me that success looks like one thing and times where it looks like another, based on what my needs are at those particular moments in time. And I think that for me, the key really comes down to understanding our needs. And I think that we people forget that step often, and forgetting the step of what are our needs at any particular moment. And if our needs are to be really supported by others and we feel completely alone and unsupported, then we're not really being successful.
No.
And if our
sorry, go on.
No, go on.
Oh, you reminded me. I think that there's something. I don't think that we are particularly good, or we're taught particularly well as young people to know what we want. And I think that's such a hard thing to figure out as grown-ups. And somebody said to me when I started this business, like, this will be the biggest personal growth journey you've ever been on. And I was like, I don't do personal growth. I have enough to handle. Sorry, I'm managing too many other things. But she was absolutely right. And part of that is just sitting back, and there's so much like lean in culture in business women world, but sitting back and just thinking, like, what do I actually want out of this? What do I want? And that helps you figure out what you need. Because if we don't know, then what are we aiming for? We have no concept of how we're going to get there.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I think what I most resonate with success is Maya Angelou's definition of liking myself, what I do, and how I do it.
Yeah. I feel proud of myself. Like, I had a really interesting, lovely childhood growing up, being very successful, doing something that I did from the time that I was 2 till the time that I first got ill. And from the outside, that looked really successful. Like, I was on a trajectory and I nailed it all the time, and I worked really hard, and I had all of the kind of awards and accolades to prove that I was going to make it in an industry where 2% of people ever even got a job. And that, I don't think that I've ever felt I never felt really proud of myself then. I was always on this insane setting of the treadmill, trying to get somewhere that I'm not even sure as a child that you can even figure out if you do really want it. It's just something that you've always done, so you just keep always doing it. And now I feel proud of myself every day in a way that I never did before. And I think that's it's a growth process.
Yeah, and it's becoming a more mature woman, and being able to recognize, those things that are important. And I think that, like you said before, when you defined well, I think that that's also really important. You brought up a really good point of the fact that it's relative, isn't it? Because the wellness industry can really make people feel like crap because they can't, it's unachievable. And even they make people that are traditionally seen as well feel like they're unwell, because it's an industry, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry that thrives on people being unwell, or and not to say, I mean, I've been in the industry for a very long time, but it's that ability to really come back and look at people and realize the diversity in humanity, and be able to look at the relative, what relatively is well for one person is not necessarily for another, and to strive to thrive in your personal situation. So I want to take your beautiful words. I want you to take your beautiful words, and I want you to paint a picture for the audience that are listening of 3 things. First, I want you to paint a picture of your life pre-illness. So what you were just talking about your, this time of period where you were looking to succeed in an industry that only, as you said, 2% succeed in. I want you to paint that picture. Then I want you to move on and paint a picture of living with an illness prior to owning your own business. And then I want you to paint a picture of now running a successful business on your terms. So although we're not talking copywriting, I just want to use your beautiful wordsmithness, if that's even a word.
Yeah.
and paint a picture for everyone so that they can get a good idea of those feelings of those 3 times in your life?
Sure. Well, as I said, I was born into a dancing family. I started at 2. The deal was as soon as I was out of nappies, I could come to dance class. My mum danced for Australia. My aunt had a really huge dance studio. So I started dancing when I was very, very little, and I danced kind of not to the detriment, but I guess to the exclusion of pretty much any other hobby or interest for my entire childhood up until the time I was about 16. So I loved, at one point, we rocked up to the beginning of the year of the dance school, which I attended 6-7 days a week. I was a cheerleader for the state basketball team. It was very intensive. And I remember, like, I loved my life.
Mm.
It was full tilt, but I had never done anything else. So that's just what I knew. And I was, fairly good at it. So I did my best. And then beginning of the dance school year came around and they introduced singing. And my mum said to the singing teacher, well, just like put her in the chorus because I'm sure she'll be fine, but she's no singer. So that was lovely. Thanks, Mum. And then we started singing, and I really found, I thought dance was my thing, and I really found this power of, standing still alone in the middle of the stage, belting something out. That I think that was the first time that I really felt like, wow, this is it. This is why I was built. This is what my life is for. This moment where you get the people in the back row to cry. Like, that's what I wanted to do with my life. So then I found musical theatre. I went to Whopper. It was a very, when I look back now, I think I'm not sure. I've got 3 children. All of them are kind of high achievers in their own right. But I'm not sure that I would not put the brakes on a little bit to what my life was like, because ultimately it's what made me unwell. I caught glandular fever from a boy, and I didn't stop dancing 7 days a week, and I just fell in a puddle. So at the beginning of year 12, that was it. I was out. And I don't even remember having a sick day before. So I was this kind of high achieving student at school, spent all my time dancing. Everything was done. This paints my mum in a bit of a bad light, which isn't really fair because all she ever did was support me. But I remember bringing home like a 9.5 or an A on something. And she'd say the first thing she would say is, what did you miss? Like, why didn't you get an A+? And I remember winning a dance competition against this girl that I'd never been able to beat before. And I came off stage and I said, what did you think? And she said, oh, when you turned around, your bum wobbled a bit. And that was my everyday, like, they were the messages. And yeah, but I wanted to be a performer. And so she was doing her utmost to help me be that. Mm. And then suddenly I am not able to go and have a shower by myself. Like, I'm crawling to the toilet. And that was for 2 years of my life. I was in bed, unable to make myself a sandwich, crawling to the loo. And there was a day we were house sitting a house in the inner city of Perth. And there was a day that I'd walked around the corner, and it was the first time I'd been out of the house for months and months and months. And I walked around the corner and the light was really bright, and I stood on the corner on a main road, and there were all these trucks going past, and I couldn't even see, like, what would my life be like? Like, I'd lost everything. I'd lost my spot in the dance, in the cheer squad. I'd lost all my dancing. I wasn't eating anything. I'd put on 40 kilos. I felt dead inside all of the time. And I just couldn't even imagine, like, even if I got better, which everybody was promising me would happen, what would I have? Like, I had nothing left of my old life. It was all gone. I'd lost my boyfriend, because he's not dating a cheerleader anymore. He's dating somebody who's put on 40 kilos and lays in bed all day. I just had nothing left. And I couldn't even imagine what I would be able to build after that. And again, what we talked about before, that's immaturity, because I was 17 and I hadn't ever done anything else and I didn't know what else I was good at. And so there was a moment where I thought I could just step out in front of a truck and that would make this all go away, because I have nothing left. So I didn't do that, mostly because I think that I thought if I survived, it's terrible. I thought if I survived, like, I would be in even more pain and I couldn't even imagine what that would be like. So I just went home and went back to bed. So that was 2 full years, like missed everything kind of good. And then things started to get a little bit better. I did go to Whopper after that. So I was accepted into their musical theatre program, and kind of clawed my way through the next 10 years. Met my first husband, found out I was pregnant, and kind of settled into just trying to survive with a 2 babies by the time that I started the business, kind of 2 babies and this new life, which was just kind of small and dull and scraping. Like every time I would go to the doctor, like I felt like I had to beg. Every part of my life was like, please help me, I'm doing a terrible job. And there was all the shine was gone. There was no shininess left. There was no kind of hope for anything different. As I said, my son's 21 this year. I didn't realize that I was pregnant for a long time. And when he came along, that was the first moment that I really thought, oh, I quite like this parenting gig. I quite like this child. It was never my intention to have children, because I was kind of on this pathway where children didn't really fit into the mix. And so that was the first moment that I can kind of remember thinking, oh, life could be happy or joyful and different. And, that would be all right. So it was just kind of it was a bit of a lull, and I did great things. Like I went to opera and I loved it, and I moved to Queensland for a little while at 19 and studied musical theatre there. I came back and did my double degree in literature and drama at Murdoch, but really only ever with, like, I just felt still like I was crawling through every day for a long time. And, things get better. I don't know what it's like for everybody who's listening, but a lot of my chronically ill friends, I guess, that I'm connected with over the powers of the internet, our coping skills get better, and even if our situation or our medical diagnosis doesn't change, definitely our ability to suck the joy out of days improves. And I think that's probably what happened during those years, is I learned to like my life, even though it wasn't what I planned.
Wow, that's huge. And thank you so much for sharing so openly about your life and, where it got to, and with the illness. And I was just hanging on to every word and really could really feel you. So how about now running a business on your terms? Can you describe that?
It's so good. There were a lot of things that I was scared about. I think this is something that I've kind of been exploring with some of my mates too, in just the chats that we've been having. I think when and it's any kind of major life event. And so for a lot of us, getting sick is a major life event. Like, it changes everything, obviously. But for anything, if you lose someone that you're really close to, if you lose a child or a parent or a loved one, if you do get sick, if you lose all your money, anything that's really going to totally impact and change the way that you live life, I think it kind of puts the fear of God into you to take any risks. So there is a real, like, once my life got back to the new normal, which was just like hanging on by the skin of my teeth, I was really reluctant to ever rock the boat. And I became this woman who just said, thank you for everything. As I said before, there was always this feeling that I was like, begging for assistance. It was just scraping all of the time. And so when I had worked 2 part-time jobs and lived on disability for a long time with the 2 children. I became a single parent. I had them by myself for 6 years, kind of working this part-time job. And it just got to the point where I was really unhappy at work, not because of the organisation, they were amazing, but just there was kind of like a couple of changes in management. There was a lot. I was employed for like 20 hours a week. I was doing all this extra work. And I said to a friend of mine, the one who said, business is going to be the biggest personal growth journey you've ever been on. Also, right. I said to her, I'm going to find another job. And she just said to me, Jay, you have to take everything that you do for these people and do it for clients that you pick and choose yourself. Like, why wouldn't you do that? And I remember sitting in her lounge room saying to her, I cannot risk the just above the poverty line life that the children and I are currently living to follow some dream, because I followed a dream before and look where it landed me. Like, I barely survived. This is not my life. My life is now getting by and saying thank you and being appreciative, and I'm not going to rock the boat, and I'm just going to do what's easy and hopefully make enough money to feed everybody. And that's like that. When I say that, I feel my soul kind of go like shrivel up inside. That's what I thought I deserved. But I don't know. So that kind of went tick, 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 tick for a little while. And I kind of had a bit of a negotiation with the organisation that I worked with, who were so incredible. And I'd said, this is what I think I want to do. I've got a 5-year plan. I'm going to do it as a side hustle. I just need to reduce I've got 20 hours a week that I can work with. Any more than that, and I know that the whole world falls apart. So I just need to reduce my work hours. Can I lose a day? And they said yes. And within 18 months, I was down to 1 day a week at work. And then eventually I quit. And now, like, I still only have 20 hours a week to work in. It's not as if starting a business cured me. And I think that's like, I have posted before, and I've written some things about, like, successful doesn't mean cured. It's not like my business made me healthy. It's just that when you do something that you really like for the 20 hours or 10 hours or 5 hours you have a week, I think when you do something that you love for the minimal amount of time that you have, and it makes you enough money, like, I didn't start it to change our financial situation, because I thought that that's financial situation that I deserved for getting sick, to be honest. Like, I thought we would always be poor because I was unwell, and that was my dues that I would have to pay. But it really has changed everything. As I said before, like, I'm proud of myself every day. My children, who have seen, I guess, me in every stage of, oh, thank you, sir, for this job, I'll do my best, and having 20 cents left at the end of the fortnight, all the way up to now, like, there's a level of respect there that I think isn't about the money, but is about, like, they've seen their mum literally pull herself up by her bootstraps and do the best with what I've got. And that makes me proud, I think, a little bit too.
Wow. So, I'm sure so many people can resonate with your situation. And even if it's not exactly the same, it's just that whole idea of really making a decision to do life a little bit differently and back yourself, and not necessarily think it's all going to happen overnight, but just take step by step in appreciation of your own circumstance. So knowing that you just had 20 hours a week and being honourable to that,
Absolutely.
and not comparing yourself to those other people that have a lot more. And I think that that's something that is really hard. Like, I know for myself as a single mother and as a, mother, that my kids' well-being is going to always take precedent over my work at this point in life. And if I sit and compare myself to women in business who don't have children, I'm
Yeah.
always going to feel behind.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And you're in that industry too, where a lot of the messaging is like, take the leap and build wings as you fall down. Like that doesn't work for all of us. Like I can't build wings that fast.
No.
Even though I felt like it was a huge risk, every step I took had to be really careful, because of the situation that we found ourselves in. And that was because of me, sadly. But that kind of health and wellness, and even the kind of the female entrepreneurship world, I think gives us a lot of messages about throwing everything at it. And that doesn't work for all of us. Like we don't have a lot to throw. We've got to nibble.
And that's why, for me, my biggest message is all about self-knowledge. And without self-knowledge, and that ranges from your physical, mental, social, environmental, spiritual, psychological, like every aspect of yourself as a whole and your circumstance, you have to be aware of, and therefore make decisions and understand your needs from that place.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
know what your values are and know what's important. Otherwise, you do get caught in always feeling not enough, always feeling like you're competing. Sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're behind, and all of that's actually okay. And so I think that the key piece to success, being successful, is knowing yourself.
Yes. Yeah, it helps.
So talking about words, because you are, you do copywriting. So I like, weave words in here. And one of the words that you brought up in that description was joy. And so I think that what you're doing is just redefining words like we did before, like redefining what well means. You're redefining what joy means.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this business has given me, I said before about the driving force, like I teach copywriting, like that's the business, right?
Yeah.
But it's not really. Like I sucker everybody in with this idea that they want to learn, everybody wants to learn about templates and everybody wants a formula. And it's not really what they want. Like every woman wants to be confident about the words that she leaves in the world. That's like, but that's a little bit more difficult to sell because people kind of come to that realization. But I love selling copywriting and I love writing copy, but that's kind of like, it's like the difference between features and benefits in copyright. Like that's the feature. The benefits are every single time a woman either writes her own words or publishes one that I've given her to use for herself, she amplifies the impact that she has on the world. And those women are so ragingly diverse in the things that they think and the things that they bring to the table, and the way that they use their power when they have a platform. And like there is a tiny bit of me in all of those things, and that's the stuff that like lights me up when I see somebody turn around and take something that I've showed them and use it and it works, and then they like turn up the volume of their own voice. Like that's the moment, that's the kicker, where I'm just like, this is what I do this for. And yes, like the successful part of the business, that is the money, for sure, that's taken some getting used to. There's been I've had to do a lot of work about deserving money that I get paid for my work, because I spent so many years thinking that I wasn't really worth anything anymore, and just saying, well, thank you for the $200 a fortnight, government, for me to live on. Like it's a massive shift in worth and money and all the money stories that we just bring, even as regular able-bodied people. But the money is really lovely and I've really gotten to be friendly with it. Yeah. But the joy comes from that moment of seeing a woman go, oh, I have something to say.
Well, I think it comes down to the ripple effect, doesn't it? Because you're providing copy, and what your joy really comes from is the ripple effect that maybe she uses your copy that one time, but then she gains momentum, and then she feels the benefits that people have had, like the validation or the acknowledgement, and then she gets a little bit more motivation or a bit more inspiration, and it's the ripple effect of what that can bring, and the ability for her to really shine, not just for herself, but to be able to get whatever message she wants to get out there, and the change that she wants to bring about it's the ripple effect to get to that point. Yep. From the original copy. And it's the same as the money. It's not about necessarily how much you're being paid at that time, but it's the ripple effect of whose lives does that money impact. And it'll impact your life, it'll impact your children's lives, and it'll impact the lives of everyone around you, because of the choices you get to do with when you've got the money. And you might be able to be more social, or you may be able to go on that holiday that then, or the self-care that then brings you that extra energy to be able to deliver other things which create change. So absolutely. I think it's the ripple effect.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for 2020 for me was, it was the COVID year. I was terrified, couldn't go out of my house, obviously, because
even in Perth.
I know, even in Perth. I didn't let my children go to school. My poor daughter was in year 11. My little boy, I didn't let him go to school either, just in case. And that was the case, I know, for a lot of unwell people, is that they were just too scared to leave their house because there wasn't enough information out there. And all of the government messaging was like, well, it only really affects the people that have like underlying conditions, and all of us with underlying conditions like, that's me, I'll be staying home, thanks. There was a bit of odd messaging there. That was a bit sad. But last year was the year that like I no longer could keep my disability card. Like I had to give it back because I earned too much money. And then I started paying the first time so 3 years ago, in one quarter, I paid as much tax as I used to live on for a whole year with 2 children. And those little moments of, wow, like that's a different life. And I've created it by doing something that I guess was my second love. It was the only other thing I was ever any good at was writing. And that was a moment.
Yeah. So that brings me to another word, and that's identity. Because, this idea that even if everything you've described so far, it's like this loss of identity to building a new identity. And I think that identity is something very interesting, because we attach to having a certain identity, and we fear to lose what we feel our identity has always been. And it's like that we're defined by this, and if I'm not that, then what am I? How do you move from losing your identity to building a new one? And you've done that so successfully. So maybe if you can just chat a little bit about that journey.
I love that you think I have. I can promise everybody who's listening and watching that it's just a right mess most of the time. Like with anything, like when you're just trying to figure out who you are. I don't think that I would have ever imagined that I would have clung on so tightly to being the disabled woman who lived on benefits quite as hard as I did. And I really hung on to that. That was almost harder to give up, because I think of the risk involved and because of the choices involved, than it was to give up the idea that I'm going to be a musical theatre star and now I can't be because I'm a sick person. To give that identity up cost me some tears and months and months and months of every single time I made a business decision or a life decision, thinking, am I doing this because I'm afraid of giving up this safe little spot of, well, I'm used to being poor. I know what to do with poverty. I know how to get through with, there were some fortnights where there were 20 cents left. I know how to be this person. Like, my children are okay. My new marriage is okay. Like, I know how to do this. Do I really want to shift everything? Do I really want to become someone else? And so it's almost like trading down was easier than trading up. Not that becoming unwell is trading down, though it felt like it at the time. But that was she was a really hard woman to give up being, and continues to be. Like every time, for a long time, as I said, I had to really think about, like, where am I making this decision from? Like, am I just terrified of doing this thing? And still I have to catch myself now and say, you know, like the Osmanpreneur thing that you mentioned at the beginning. I was nominated for that for 4 years in a row before I even filled out my nomination form, because when I really thought about it, that fourth year when I got the nomination, I was like, what am I afraid of? The answer was, if I won, I would have to know in my head that I do this for 20 hours a week. Do I really deserve it? But I'm sick, but maybe I shouldn't really be this successful. And if I won, I'd have to stand on stage as a fat woman and say, yes, I'm the best in the room. That's what scared me. You know what I mean? Like all those stories. And when I turned up to the Osmanpreneur thing, the woman who walked in before me was the doctor with the baby on her hip. And I texted my husband and said, there's no point in being here. There is a doctor and she has a baby on her hip. Like, what am I here for? This is a waste of time. But that's what that really being scared of being a woman who has a little bit of power and has a platform, and am I going to use it right? And am I going to say the right things? And am I going to inspire people to do things the right way? And there's a lot of responsibility with stepping up, I think, and leaving that scared small woman behind, because she was in a very safe little spot and I'm not.
I think a lot of it comes down to that idea of familiar equals comfort, and comfort is what we naturally want to stay in, because discomfort is uncomfortable and no one likes to be uncomfortable.
No.
And so
I think when you're a sick person, you're just looking for those moments of feeling okay.
Yeah.
So when those little moments of feeling okay come along, you're like, well, I'm so grateful that I just feel okay. That I obviously only want to speak from lived experience. I was almost like worried to give those up.
Yeah.
Like, and what if there's something better than okay?
Yeah, yeah. And
crazy.
It's so common, you know.
Yeah,
and I think that this idea, and I think COVID has really, the year really highlighted how much unfamiliar is uncomfortable. And people don't deal well with discomfort in general. So I think that it's very normal to want to hang on to those situations that aren't necessarily allowing you to thrive, but they're also comfortable enough to stay in. And we see that people see that over and over again in their own personal situations, whether it be staying in abusive relationships or, you know, or lots of other areas, whether it's a job that isn't really doing much for them, but it's comfortable enough.
Yeah.
And so we settle with comfortable enough instead of the possibility that the unknown. And so it's that balance, isn't it, between holding on and letting go, that life balance.
Yep. It doesn't stop. I don't think there is a destination that you reach.
No,
and suddenly
I don't think
you're
so
like,
either.
I'm good.
So do you think that maybe your high performance sport gave you the discipline and the determination that you now use in your everyday life and business?
I think it certainly taught me some things. I think it certainly taught me about finding the spot where you make people go, like what am I trying to say? Performers who can make you feel something in your heart so your eyes well up. Like it's the same skill for any kind of art, and writing is art. So I think it taught me about that. I think it certainly helped me, you know, like when I started the business, I was never going to speak. I was never going to have any human interaction. I wasn't going to have a podcast. Like it was all just like, I'm going to write things for people and that's it. Going to write things for people, done. And then one person invited me to teach their, you know, little crew about copywriting. And so I did one Zoom call and that's the end of it. And now 60% of my time is spent like this, speaking to people, teaching stuff, which is amazing and wonderful. But I guess that it really helped with that. Like I'm not scared to step on a stage and go, right, let me tell you a thing, and let me make you laugh, and let me take your barriers down a little bit, and maybe I'll be a little bit daggy and say a silly thing, and maybe that'll help you feel a little bit more relaxed. So there's that, I guess there's that kind of audience performer connection that helps people understand what you're trying to teach them a little bit better, that I find like a little bit easier, I guess, than some other people would. As far as discipline, I don't know. I think it really taught me something, even though I lost it, even though I didn't get there, wherever there was, it definitely taught me something about creating a life and a career around something that not everybody succeeds at, but that if you stick out for long enough and you try every different avenue and you are constantly kind of looking at yourself and thinking, well, I might not fit here, but maybe I could make myself a space here. There's a flexibility, I think, in performers that means that we can wiggle our way into another spot. If there's not a spot available at this table, well, we're going to start our own table. We're going to invite our friends. And I think that's maybe what that's taught me too. And that's kind of like resilience, I guess, but almost also some like creativity in, well, all of the spots are taken in copywriting queendom, so I'm going to make a new one.
I think a lot of it also is about self-trust. And I think you went from what you've described, from losing to rebuilding trust and self-trust.
Yes. Oh my God. No one's ever said that to me before. Yes, I think you're right. My eyes welling up tell me you're right about that. Yep.
So a big part of self-trust is that ability to be really connected to our inner power source and not be externally referenced, so that we are internally referenced. And for me, that's a huge part of what well-being means, or being well means.
Yeah, right. I love that. You're quite clever at that, aren't you? That's really good. I love it. No, that's bang on. That's bang on. Because if I had started the business and I'd looked out here to like, who do I want to be like? I absolutely would have thought there is no space for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yes. So I think that I suppose in summary, it's just accepting and respecting and trusting yourself wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Which I think you have now come to a place from, I mean, I'm sure that there are days that you don't. We are all human and we have days that we don't. But on the whole, you've come to a place where you do that quite successfully.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I value my own opinion too. I think that's something that I wouldn't have ever had before I went through this process and started the business. Is I do value my own opinion, and I'm really good at resourcing, like many other women are. We're really good at finding other answers and finding people to support us and asking the right questions and really sitting with the answers. But I have gotten much better in the last 6 years of going, thank you very much for that. I think I'm going to do this. And that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So it's also, your ability to know your limits and assert your boundaries lovingly.
Yes. Well, there's no choices with my boundaries. And I think that's what I say often to some of the women who come through my courses who also have chronic illnesses or other life situations, which means that they have no wiggle room, is that when your boundaries are airtight, there is no choice. If I worked 40 hours this week, next week and the week after and the week after that would be a disaster, not only for me, but for the whole family and my clients. Like, I can't let that many people down. So therefore, that's it. It's 20 hours. There's no shake up of Jay to make it any different, which I think if you are an able-bodied businesswoman, of course you can just push yourself to get out to that 60 hours a week work and just make it all happen. And I think that maybe is to people's detriment. When you have ironclad boundaries that say, this is how it has to be, well, there's no arguing with that. You just make it work within. And that's kind of, I'm not being hashtag blessed about it at all, but that is a benefit, let's say.
Yeah. And so you're a person which, just in this conversation has been highlighted, that you know yourself really well. You know what your abilities are. You know what your disabilities are. You know what your time schedule is. You just know your capacity quite well.
Yeah.
So what tools, apart from having boundaries, what tools do you use to ensure that your actions are congruent or aligned with your values and your capacity?
I think probably from a business perspective is that everything that I do has a buffer. That means that the client is never impacted by them choosing me to do work for them. That was a really important thing for me to figure out at the beginning, because I didn't want to be secretive about having a chronic illness, but I also didn't expect my clients to have to compromise if they chose to work with me. So and that decision happened because my Ella at the time, she must have been about 12, or maybe 11. We were sitting at the dinner table and we were talking about, she was doing Rosa Parks for an assignment, and she asked me what passing was. And we talked about that. And she said, it's kind of like what you do, Mum, because, hey, nobody really knows that you're sick unless they know you really well. And I thought, oh my goodness, is that what I'm doing? Am I just like, everything's fine? And I'm pretty sure that's what I was doing. And it was around about the time that I started the business, and I didn't want to do that. And so I made a really conscious decision not to do that, and to talk about things that were uncomfortable, and maybe they would cost me a client or two. But I felt like we didn't have enough of a conversation about people with barriers still doing an amazing job. And so I wanted to do that. So that's probably something that's really important. Again, resourcing. I have an amazing ability to collect women that I connect with fast and furiously, and then have a fair trade agreement with. Like, at any time you can message me and say, I'm stuck, and I will help you to the best of my ability. And same swapsies. So I have a lot of business women in my back pocket who are amazing at a whole range of different things, that at any time I can say, I'm stuck with this business thing or this life thing. Like, I feel like this part of my life is a mess, and I have support on tap. And that's just from like good relationship building. Yeah. So I think that's kind of important. I cannot, and I know that this is not something that if I'd heard somebody say this is a single mother, I would have rolled my eyes. But my husband is the roadie of our lives. Like, he drives children to where they need to be every single night of the week. He works a job that means that he brings nothing home. I'm really like, whatever I need, he will be there and be setting it up, and he gets off on time to pick up children from the bus. So that's a definite bonus. I married somebody who was happy to just make sure that the J show runs smoothly at all times. He'll walk in, and if I'm still typing, he'll just make dinner. Like, there's no discussion about it. So he's pretty flipping fabulous. And sometimes I look at him and think, I don't really know what I did to deserve you. Like, why on earth would you pick me? But he says it's exciting to be part of our lives. So that's kind of nice. So yeah, I think that those, like the boundaries, the buffer, and the support system means that kind of everything generally runs like it should. And I'm not a very naturally organized person. I'm really a bit of a creative flibbity-gibbet. So I have to really focus on being organized, even though it's not really my natural state of being, because when things get a little bit disorganized, I can't afford the spoons to pick them back up. You know what I mean? Like all my spoons are allocated to whatever I'm planning to do in my day, and I don't have any left if something doesn't really go right. So I really do have to have like a schedule and all the boring things and be productive and all that stuff, when really my brain just wants to go, blah, 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 let's make this.
Yeah. I love it.
Let's create this thing.
I love it. And I think that those three things that you really mentioned before are vital. That support network, you know, the relationships with the support, and the buffer and the boundaries. And I think that for everyone, whether you've got a disability or you don't, I think that those three things are vital.
Yes. Yeah.
I think
you have to know people. I think that's something I don't say enough. I think, you know, those relationships where everybody's like, oh, you're doing a great job. I think at a certain point in business, you have to have people that are like, Jay, that's not a great idea. Or that's not in alignment with your brand, or I don't think it's going to do you any benefit, or you just did a bad job of that. Yeah. Like you have to have people in your life that are like, nah.
call you on the bullshit.
Yeah, because you can get a little bit like that one. Copywriting queen. Like, now calm down, love. Make sure that you live up to that every day. And I think you need those people in your life that are not just going to be like, wow, you're so amazing, you're doing such a good job.
Yeah, brilliant. And you said some word before that I was struggling to listen to the rest of the sentence because the word was so good when you talked about your organisational skills and your creative.
Oh, I'm a creative flippity-gibbet. Yes. Flippity-gibbet. Yeah, that's my natural state of being is let's make a thing. And then I have to go through the whole process of like, does that thing make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that what I really feel is that in your boundaries and your communication to clients with working with an invisible illness, and it seems to me that there's this real fine balance between avoiding pity, but still gaining compassion and empathy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think empathy is a bit of a two-way street.
Yeah.
So I'd turn up with empathy. I don't know if I am pitied. I don't think but I think that might be my personality too. I think because I am forthright and forthcoming with stories like this, like I wouldn't have ever said to you, no, I don't want to talk about that because I don't want anyone to know. Yeah. I think that there is, you know, and my clients are really smart and they invest a lot of money, which means they've done a lot of research. Like they turn up in my emails or on the first call and they're like quoting things back to me. So they've done their homework and they've watched the things and they've listened to the podcast and they've read the blogs. Like they know what's going down. I think definitely, I think it's a benefit for some of the women who see themselves in any part of that story where they think, well, I do feel like I have a restriction on my time or energy or thought process or creativity. Yeah. And if Jay can figure out how to do that in 20 hours a week, I might ask her how she does it. So I think that's, you know, that's a definite benefit, because if a client turns up and says, let's do 3 months together and teach me everything that you know in the 3 months, and they have 40 hours a week, guess what? Like, we're on fire, lady. We're about to do all the things. So yeah, I think that's, yeah. And I think I'm probably still really hard on myself in that I don't, obviously your question has just made me uncomfortable. Let's just say that, because I don't expect compassion.
Yeah.
I expect that I will be held to the same standard as any other person that they would decide to pick. Yeah. And my processes, which is again, my creative flibbertigibbet, it's like, processes. But my processes and my systems are set up in a way that unless something went terribly wrong, I can't fail them.
Yeah. I think the reason that I brought that up was because you were saying how you make it very clear to the person, like what your capacity is, what your,
I do.
To be able to be completely honest and transparent. So there is level of what I was saying. There is a level that you can gain compassion and understanding from the other person with what your limitations and your capacity is, but you've done it in a way so successfully to be transparent, to have such open, honest communication, which you sort of said wasn't as easy in the beginning, but you learnt you had to kind of do that to avoid just being pitied, like, so
yes, you're right.
Kind of what I was sort of coming
and people will trade you stories. Like if you lead with that, and I mean, I guess that's why that's part of the reason I like copywriting so much, because when you lead with, what it's like. If you get on a stage and you tell an anecdote or you tell a story about something, when you step off that stage, there is a line of people that want to tell you a similar story straight afterwards, because something about the story made them feel something and made them realize that they're similar to you and they want to share that shared connection with you. And I think when you lead with that kind of honesty about really who you are as a person behind the brand, then when people turn up the first time, they're like, I'm so glad you said that, because this is how I feel about this thing. How can we work this out? And so there leaves it's an opening and a gap for people to go, oh my God, you're a human. I'm a human too. Let me tell you about all the things I've got going on, and then we'll move forward. And it creates an ease, I think, when you're honest about what you got going on.
Yeah, well, it's relationship building, isn't it? Authentic relationship building. Yeah, absolutely. So for you, I mean, we always hear terms like go with the flow.
Yeah.
And in your situation, and to be honest, most people's situation, going in the flow doesn't really always work. I mean, it does to an extent, and I like to spend a fair bit of my time going with the flow. But in your situation where you're very limited on time and energy, etc., you need to go against the flow.
Yeah, I think you have to have a bit of resistance, and I don't mind being a little bit of a dissenter to that. I don't mind being the person that tells maybe your listeners to just not be like dead fish, go with the flow.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels good, and other times you think, I just want to step aside from this river for a second and build a fire, or make a teepee, like something, eat a snack. Like, what do I want out of this? Because life is very long and also very short, weirdly at the same time. And I think when exactly what I said at the top of this conversation with you, when something happens to you to blindside you, you realize like how little time you actually have for what other people think you should be doing. And you really have to have those moments where if you're not feeling the flow, or the flow is not working for you, or you feel like you could be so comfortable in the flow that you're going to be flowing till you go into the grave, then it's time to resist a little bit and go, I'm not sure about this. What do I want to do? What's going to light me up? Because if I've got 20 hours a week only for the next maybe 40 years of my life, I want to make those 20 hours pretty flipping good.
Love it Well, I think we've talked about so much, and there's some other things that we're going to talk about, but I'm very aware of time. And I love how honestly you've shared today, and I think so many people will be able to resonate with your story and really feel you, and I think you really are an inspiration, Jay, and you're really flipping good at what you do.
Yeah.
I'm even picking the word. And, that day that I met you at the Osmumpreneur Awards, and to hear that I didn't know that took you 4 times to put in the application.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that when you got there, you thought, oh, I might as well leave almost. You saw that woman. But I'll tell you right now, sitting on the other side of the table and listening to you talk, listening to you share about what you've done with your business, how you've got there, and some plans that you had in taking it further, it was seriously a no-brainer. And to no disrespect to the other women that came forward for that category. Every single woman was amazing, but you were without fail a standout, and all of us judges was just a easy, yep, Jay's winner.
Oh, thank you. I'm actually like uber blushing, like my whole face is hot. That's really lovely to hear. So thank you. And thank you for seeing me. Like, that's all we want, really, right? We want someone to see everything that we bring to it and how excited we are about it. So I really appreciate that. That was a really lovely moment.
Absolute pleasure. It was, as I said, super easy choice. And it's been so wonderful to follow your journey since, and to really get to know your business and what you do, and to be able to sometimes flick you some copy and go, wow, that was awesome. So yeah, thank you for doing that for me sometimes. So that's been great. But yeah, it's been, such a pleasure to finally chat with you today, and you are just, as I said, a true inspiration. So for everyone listening today, we'd both love to know what your biggest takeaway is from today's conversation. Leave us a comment and let us know. And if you'd like more information on Jay and what she does do with her copywriting and courses that she offers, or ways that you can work with her, how could they find you, Jay?
I live at crispcopy.com.au, and Crisp Copy on everything: Instagram, Facebook, all the good places. Hit me up.
Fantastic. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, please share it with your friends, and consider subscribing to the Wellthy Living podcast on iTunes and YouTube and any other listening platforms. To find out more about my services, you can visit my website at wellthyliving.com.au or connect with me on any of my social media channels. So until next time, remember, connection is medicine.